Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We know that Islam is designed for the times of turbulence, of the mihan, and there is a certain strength or sawla that the believer possesses that enables him to deal with that, to sail the ship of his soul over the stormy seas that are expected as history and the human condition darkens. We know that the ibadat of our religion, the 5 prayers, everything in the religion is sculpted in order to provide us with a protection from the extraordinary gamut of increasingly technologically induced distractions which pull at us and claw at us almost at every moment of our lives. There is a junnah, a protection, a suit of armour which is provided by the sunnah for these times. We know also that it is a sign of Allah's favour upon this ummah that the ummah and its faithful followers should be the subject of contempt and abuse by people who represent civilizations of power, wealth, privilege, violence and cruelty. It is a great confirmation of Allah's inayah towards the ummah of this Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in our times it is the people who have the most wealth, the most power, the most privilege, who are the most forthright in their attacks upon us. Great media empires, great corporations, great nations are focusing particularly upon the ummah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is part of the normalcy of monotheism and has been ever since the time when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam led his people from bondage in Egypt. The Quran is full of guidance on how to deal with such situations. The adha, the abuse, the bullying language to which the believers are subject is something which is a constant of history. The true believer is given greater sakina, greater calmness by this. As he captains his ship across these stormy seas, he feels in his heart, despite the thunder and the lightning, profound calm and rightness in his soul, because his qibla and his destination is only the safe harbour of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he pays no attention to anything else. He is one of those of whom it is said, La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. They fear not, neither do they grieve. They don't fear for the future, they don't grieve for the past, because they know that Allahu ghalibun ala amri. Allah is in command of his affair, which is nothing other than our affairs, all of them. So in this age we should seek the sakina in the midst of the storm. That is the secret of the believer in this time. But of course, to accomplish this, and many of us are agitated by sailing through the present storm, to accomplish this we need guides, not just people who can give us factual information on how to engage in i'tisam, holding fast to the sunnah of the chosen one in such turbulent times, but also, and far more transformatively, people who themselves live in their lives and in their being, in the spiritual metabolism which all those who come into contact with them experience and intuit, who live in their lives this reality of sakina. Those who have been through testing times of turbulence, perhaps poverty, perhaps persecution, who see the extraordinary inequalities of today's world that seem to be mounting by the day, and yet whose hearts are filled with tranquility and love for Allah and His Messenger. We need those people. We need not just to be told that it is possible to achieve this tranquility, but we need to see that there are people who have achieved it. That's why it's a great privilege for any country to be welcoming somebody of the grandeur and the profundity of Habib Umar bin Hafiz. Someone who comes from a place which is a blessed backwater, an oasis of sakina and of dhikrullah, the remembrance of Allah by which hearts find peace. From the valley of Hadramaut, a descendant of Imam al-Hussein, a descendant of the illustrious line of the Ahl al-Bayt who have in their lives shown such dignity in such adversity, whose father, rahmatullahi alayh, Al-Habib Muhammad bin Salim was arrested and killed by the communist persecution in Hadramaut 30 or so years ago, someone who experienced that particular pain, and who nonetheless was able, by going to the Ribat of al-Bayda and then studying with the Qadi of Ta'iz and other notable survivors of the secular Inquisition of the time, was able not only to cross that stormy sea, but to grow in the process, so that he became not only a spiritual giant, but he was able to train spiritual giants. He was Murabbi and Murshid. He grew other people. He engaged in taslik, not just travelling the path himself, but helping others to travel in the wake of his own ship. He established as a sign of Allah's idhn, his divine permission to his blessed intention and works, the Dar al-Mustafa, which has become one of the most spectacularly successful institutions of fully traditional learning in the Islamic world, at a time when all the voices of privilege and contempt are directing their bile and hatred at traditional institutions and madrasas in the Islamic world. His vision was that we need to be more traditional, not less. But more traditional in the complete Islamic sense, the Sunni sense, of there being a transformation of the soul, as well as a transformation of the amount of knowledge that we hold in our minds. So Dar al-Mustafa is a place for upholding Allah's Sharia and law outwardly by training a new generation of students, many hundreds of which come to Dar al-Mustafa in Tarim from the corners of the Islamic world and beyond, and dozens from the Western world as well. But also an inward training, so that we can not just be form but content. We can be ma'na as well as hiss. We're not just the outward copiers of the forms of the Mustafa salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, but we have within ourselves at least the aspiration to emulate something of the magnificence, the glory, the light of his inward ahwal. And this is what the Ummah lacks now. The Ummah lacks that particular wisdom that enables us to be something like the perfection of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even if it's 1/1,000,000th of his perfection, rather than just imitate its outward form. In Islam, which is a complete vision for human life, merely being satisfied with the outward form and the form of the doctrines is not enough, and it can even lead into aberrations. Many of the aberrations we see today in some corners of the Islamic world are the result of a lack of sakina, a lack of tranquility, a profound anger at the way in which Allah has arranged history at this particular point, which is the result of a lack of sakina, which is the consequence of a lack of dhikr. So he is a person who is dhakir, he remembers his Lord. He is also mudhakkir, he reminds others of his Lord. And that's what we need in our age. If we are to be increased in tranquility by the turbulences and the increasing rapidity of change in today's world, by the increasing gulf between rich and poor, between the powerful and the powerless, between those who have access to the media and those who are its powerless recipients and victims, if we are to be increased in tranquility in these difficult ages, we need to be caught up in the slipstream of such men, so that inshallah we will be able to taste something of this maqam, this extraordinary capacity to have what is known as al-khalwa fil jalwa, to be alone in the crowd, participating fully in one's society. But when you walk through the shopping mall or the airport terminal or wherever it might be, your heart is not where everybody else's hearts increasingly are, which is with the retail outlets or whatever else it might be. Your heart is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Outwardly, you're part of the crowd. Inwardly, you're focused exclusively on the glory of your Creator, to whom you will return. That's the way to stay sane. That's the way to remain a fully human, balanced, calm human being in a world in which everybody is suffering from stress, from depression, from disorders of various kinds, that the endlessly proliferating amount of matter which is set before us for our consumption or for our entertainment can only increase rather than decrease. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide the footsteps of Habib Umar as he ventures upon his da'wah tour of the United States and Canada, and inshallah to grant people correct adab with him, to grant them respect for the huge sacrifices which he and his family have made, and to accept his intention and the intention of all those who are present here and in his other gatherings and majalis and assemblies in North America, to accept all of their intentions, inshallah, according to Allah's generosity, not according to what we deserve. Jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin is sculpted in order to provide us with a protection from the extraordinary gamut of increasingly technologically induced distractions which pull at us, and there is a certain strength or sawla that the believer possesses that enables him to deal with that, to sail the ship of his soul over the stormy seas that are expected as history and the human condition darkens. We know that the ibadat of our religion, the 5 prayers, everything in the religion, وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ. We know that Islam is designed for the times of turbulence, of the